First thing that I did when I started preparing was for CAT was to find a motive as to why I want to do an MBA. Because unless you're not very sure if you want to go for MBA or not, you will not put in 100% of your efforts. So the first thing for me was to define my career path for like 5 years and 10 years, and then work towards it. So when I started preparing for CAT, and I started watching YouTube channels, the content available on YouTube channels for clearing my basics, and then I used to move to sectional tests that were available, and then eventually mocks. And then the most important thing for me was to analyze mock. So I used to sit and analyze each and every question, each and every option that was given, and why did I get a question right and why did I get a question wrong. So that was my overall strategy on how I went about preparation for CAT per se. So for me, I got into IIM Calcutta in my second attempt. So I gave my first attempt in CAT 2019 when VRC was abysmally difficult, and it was absolutely different in terms of the pattern as compared to the previous years. So I scored pretty low in VRC. I scored a 80 percentile, because of which I did not get too many calls. So when I was writing CAT 2020, I knew it was a pain point for me. And I knew that I had to do something different and I had to put in more efforts. So what I started doing for VRC was, the first thing I did was I sat with CAT 2019 paper and I tried to solve it before without a timer, so that I know if my concepts are weak, or if it is the time pressure that puts me in trouble. And I realized my concepts were not very weak. It was the time management that was problematic for me. So what I did was I started reading articles on sites like Aeon, Smithsonian Magazine, or Economist. So these are usually the sites from where you actually get CAT passages. So I started reading those so that I get an idea about the language of the articles that are there in CAT. And when I used to read an article, I used to make sure that after reading an article, I write the summary of it, I write the central idea of it, and I write what was the author trying to communicate, what was the tone that was used. Because those were the sort of questions that we could see in CAT 2019. All these were critical reasoning questions. So I made sure that I understood what the author was trying to communicate, and it helped me a long way. Apart from that, I also bought some GMAT material, because I realized that the material that I had, or the material that was circulated by coaching centers, did not focus too much on the critical reasoning part. So I did not even buy the book. There were a couple of books I used. One I took from my senior, and one PDF of which was available online. So I downloaded it, and I referred to both of those books to develop my concepts of critical reasoning. So to go through the entire thing that was given, there were exercises. I used to solve those exercises, and eventually I used to go and write sectional tests and then mocks. So getting an understanding as to how critical reasoning questions were to be solved also helped me score a better percentile this time in VRC. Then the third thing that I did was I used to make sure that I spend at least 30 minutes every day in reading, because for quants and LRDI, it's like even if one day you don't do it, you don't forget the entire concept. But for reading is, if you create a gap of say one day or a couple of days, then it keeps on increasing, because you don't want to go back to reading again. So I used to make sure that I sit and read for 30 minutes at least. And 30 minutes was my timer, because CAT eventually became a 40 minutes paper. So I knew that I would spend basically 30 minutes for RC and the rest of it for VA. So I used to focus on reading for 30 minutes so that my mind is used to reading and comprehending for 30 minutes. And then again, going through GMAT material and reading too much and trying to understand what the author was trying to say helped me in the VA section also, because I knew the sentence structure, what can be the flow of a sentence. So it helped me eliminate the odd one out questions, the odd one out in the odd one out questions, and it helped me in the para jumbles, and summary was again essentially RC only. So it helped me there. So reading is a must. And then again, analysis. Whenever I used to write a mock, I've realized that a lot of people, what they do is they don't go back to questions that they've attempted correctly. But it is very important for one to even analyze those questions, because the logic that you put behind marking the correct answer might not be the correct one. So you have to go back and read if the answer that you've marked is because of the same logic or the correct logic or not. And if it's not, then you understand why did you mark it and what was the correct logic and what is the gap. So that is how you can make sure that when eventually you're writing CAT, you're marking the correct options because you know what rationale goes behind picking the right answer. We can put it that way because if you look at, say, 2018 paper, the fonts was very, very difficult. So solving a lesser number of questions could fetch you a higher percentile. Exactly what happened with LRDI last year. Solving a bare minimum of 8 questions could fetch you 90 plus percentile. So level of difficulty for quants going down is obviously a boon for non-commerce, non-engineer people, because we are not. I being a commerce graduate, I faced the difficulty in solving 2018 paper, but for 2019 and 2020, quants was a breeze for me. And English, of course, English people say is a pain point for engineers, but I think with the pattern changing and moving towards critical reasoning, not everybody is used to critical reasoning type of questions and answers. So the starting point is more or less similar for everybody when it comes to strengthening, weakening questions, etc. So for me, when I started preparing for quants in 2019, I used to be terrible at it. Terrible to the extent that I used to score in single digits sometimes. So I went to my coaching teacher, and the first thing that my mentor said was that you have to keep on solving, because unless you don't solve n number of times, you will not know how to solve it. And I just solved the basic booklet. For me, especially geometry was very difficult because it involved too many concepts, and the questions could be of too many varieties. So I tried to spend too much time on it. So I gave good couple of months to it, and what I did in those 2 months was just geometry. So solving the booklet about 3 times, 4 times, writing sectional tests, attempting the questions of geometry that were in the past 10 to 12 years of CAT papers. So that is how I went about geometry. For quants in general, also my approach was same. So the first thing that I did in quants was I divided it into 4 segments. One was the arithmetic, the second was geometry, the third was algebra, and fourth was miscellaneous. So everything other was miscellaneous. The first thing that I picked up was arithmetic, because the proportion of arithmetic in CAT exam is too high. So if you have your basics of arithmetic right, you are fairly doing well in CAT exam. So I focused my energy on getting my basics right for arithmetic, and I'm emphasizing on the words basic because concept clarification is very, very important. So my way to go about preparation for quants was, for example, I pick up a topic, say TSD. So I solve the entire booklet, and then I go to sectional test. So the basic sectional test, the one that help you judge if your concepts are strong enough. So I used to attend those tests. And if at all I got something wrong, I knew that this portion of the concept that I've studied is not very strong. So I used to go back and attempt those questions again. And then I used to come back and re-attempt those questions. Then I moved on to another difficulty level, and then eventually to the level 3 difficulty level questions. So that helped me in clarifying my concepts and developing a strong base. Another thing that I did for quants was I maintained a booklet which included all formulas and all types of questions. So, for example, TSD, again, if we take an example, there are too many types of questions, both going up and down, elevator questions, the you can say racist questions, etc. So there were too many types of questions. For me, what I did was I used to write all the formulas in that notebook and every type of question that was available. So I used to write the question and I used to solve it there very clearly so that I know how such type of questions are to be solved. That helped me. Why? Because quants is too vast. So when you're, say, solving geometry and you have to write a mock, you cannot one day before the mock come and solve TSD again. So I just used to go through that entire booklet before my examination or on weekends or whatever. And I used to find all types of questions, all formulas in one place. So it was very handy. So it came very handy because when I wrote my mock examinations, I was everything was very fresh in my mind because I'd already seen it a couple of days back or something like that. So that formula booklet helped me too much in getting fresh and letting the concepts stay fresh in my head. The then again, the final thing was to write mocks very religiously, not take it as a joke, and to analyze everything, even the questions that are done right. So, what the most of the coaching centers, what they do is they'll provide you a time analysis of how much time have you taken in solving the answer and how much time on average people who've got it correct have taken. So I used to see those timings, and if my timing was less than the average, then I used to be happy that okay, my time I'm taking less time here. But if it was more than the average, then I used to go back to the solutions to see if the way that I'm attempting the question is it right or is it not right? Because there are several ways of solving a question, and what you might be using might not be the best. So I used to go back and check if the method that is given, the fastest method to solve, is the method that I was using. So I used to solve those questions that way. And of course, the questions that were incorrect, I used to try and solve them on my own first. And if I cannot solve them at any cost, then I used to go to the solutions that were given and see. Same went for unattempted questions. I solved them. And if I could not solve it at any cost, I used to go back to the solution. So one another thing that I would want to tell everybody is to, in case of both LRDI and quants, when you're analyzing, don't jump to the solutions directly. Try to brainstorm. Because when you're brainstorming, you are essentially finding too many possibilities of your questions going wrong and you're eliminating it. Because if you've not attempted a question, that is because you did not know it. And when you start solving it, when you start applying the logic, you will either solve it or not solve it. When you're not solving it, then you're finding what did you do wrong. And if you're solving it, you are seeing that, okay, I knew this, but probably it did not click me at that time. So you can figure out why did it not click you at that time and focus on enhancing or strengthening that concept. So my funda was to not at all go to the solutions directly and spend whatever time I could. So for LRDI, if I'm taking say 1 hour also on solving a set, I would devote that 1 hour on solving one set so that I can get a solution on my own. I used to jump to the solutions only in the middle of sets if I reach a dead point and dead end and I cannot proceed any further. Then I used to go and take a hint. So that helped me develop a deeper understanding of the concepts and the way how questions can be solved.
I have a question here. You mentioned that CR helped you in the RC.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that point actually. I'm just trying to understand how the GMAT CR helps you in this RC or VA in any way.
So
Thank you.
If you look at the last couple of years, CAT 2019 and CAT 2020, you'll see a change in the pattern of questions that CAT is giving you. So if you look at 2017 or 2018 paper, you'll essentially find reading comprehension questions that you used to find in school. What is this? What do you mean by this? What did this do? And all that stuff. But if you look at 2019 and 2020, you are going to find questions like, which of the following statement can strengthen the central idea of the author? That is critical reasoning. So unless you are not aware of the central idea and what the author is trying to communicate, you will not be able to figure out the statement which is strengthening the idea that the author is trying to communicate. So that is where GMAT books helped me because it gave me an idea about all these strengthening and weakening and assumptions and whatever other different patterns or the different variations in the questions that you find in critical reasoning. And it helped me in VA because I used to read, I used to understand the sentence structure when I was going through the GMAT books because when you download the GMAT book or if you buy it, you will also find a section on sentence structure, etc. So I went through those chapters, and it helped me figure out that there are some words that go in a certain order. For example, but also, So there are certain words that you see that this has to come after this. So in case you don't know those sort of things, there's very high possibility that you might not get the correct order. I got 3 on 3 in my parajumbles correct, and it was purely because of logic that I used finding those words.